Do you remember what it felt like to play Ark for the very first time? One of my core gaming memories is awakening on the southern coast of the island, literally trembling with anticipation as I waited for the spawn-in animation to just finish already, and then finally gaining control of my character, only to be immediately one-shot from behind by some high-level dinosaur dickhead. There's multiple moments like that from my first Ark Survival Evolved experience, which, even now, years later, I look back on with fondness. Is fondness the right word? Yeah, let's go with fondness. And they're a big part of the reason why I've returned to Ark repeatedly over the past decade. At least I did until Snail shouted out the digital diarrhea that is Aquatica.
That is one big pile of shit.
Then Ark Survival Ascended was announced, and setting aside all the lies and bullshit surrounding said announcement for the time being, the strongest reaction I could bring myself to muster upon hearing the news was bemusement.
Are you serious?
Why would I buy Ark when I was already playing Ark? I mean, sure, the new version looked prettier, but you can slap all the makeup you want on a cadaver. At the end of the day, it's still a bloody corpse. So I refused to opt in, but I knew at some arbitrary point in the future I would relent and give Ark Survival Ascended a chance. Well, today is that arbitrary point, and I intend to survive for 365 days on the island in ASA. And maybe, if I'm fortunate, I'll be able to recapture some of that early days Ark Survival Evolved magic and create a whole new series of moments. First impressions? Why the hell is everything so bloody orange? The island's gone and gotten herself a fake tan. And judging by the specific shade, I think it came in a bottle. But seriously, this is the kind of colour palette I'd expect from Scorched Earth, not the island. Although, to be fair, you know, fake tan aside, it does look quite pretty so far. And my computer hasn't exploded, so that's always a bonus. Normally in ASE, my playthroughs on the island follow a pretty predictable pattern. I'll spawn in South Zone 3, tickle the taint of the lava cave in order to snag myself a cheeky bit of early game crystal, raft on over to Herbivore Island and grab a couple of starter tames, then trek inland, heading towards the centre of the map where I'd build my main base. But considering this was, well, I was going to say it's a new game, but that's not entirely accurate. It's more like a fresh start in an old game. So because this was a fresh start, I wanted to try playing outside of the box and focus on doing Ark things I wouldn't usually do. Like, for example, my spawning here in the north. But choosing a different spawn point aside, to be totally transparent with you, at this current Beach Bob stage, I didn't have anything even close to resembling a plan for how I was going to spend the next 365 days. My overarching goal was to simply go with the flow and see what the game threw at me, even if that meant getting distracted every 5 minutes. Why is there floating rocks there? What the hell? How long has this game been out for? 2023. I see. And we couldn't maybe do something about this in just over 2 years? No? Of course, before the experience could truly begin, I needed to get the essentials out of the way. If you're at all familiar with survival crafting games, you know the drill. A bit of arboreal assassination and other miscellaneous environmental destruction, craft up the basic tools and gear, etc, etc. Nothing all that interesting. What I was interested in learning though was what, if any, changes had been introduced to ASA that might make the upgrade from ASE worth the money and hard drive space. Hang on a sec. What is that? Hang on. Because I know there's a skill tree, but I didn't think I had access to the skill tree because I didn't buy the Lost Colony bullshit. No thank you. Huh. Okay. Apparently I do have access to the skill tree. You know what, that's going to be a later problem. I'll come back to that at some point. I'm not interested in that right now. And to my unironic delight, skill trees of dubious usefulness weren't the only changes I discovered. I gotta admit, I'm feeling very exposed here. I know what lurks in the bush there. I don't want to be camping out here too long. And that parasaur is running away from something, so that doesn't fill me with optimism. You know what? That'll do for now. Give me all that. Nope. Can I pick up? Can I? Yes. Oh, that is a nice change. I get to pick up my shit. Don't need S+ for that anymore. Excuse you? Why am I being attacked by a dodo? Oh, I think I know. That's a baby. Oh, I forgot about the change they made. Yeah, you can just straight up claim babies now. I don't really want or need a level 20 baby dodo. Look, mate, in the long run, this is going to be kinder. Sorry. Did I just get prime meat from that? Ooh. Ooh, that's interesting. Even though I was clearly feeling immense guilt for murdering an innocent dodo chick, I somehow managed to dig deep and dredge up the strength to soldier on. And I would need that physical and mental fortitude, for my journey would be a long and arduous one. In adherence with my theme of trying new things, I decided to build a base in perhaps the most inhospitable environment on the entire island. A place I'd never permanently called home in any of my previous playthroughs. The snow biome. The snow biome is not a place you can simply move to. It requires forethought, planning, and preparation, which might be an issue if you, I don't know, maybe sometimes have a tendency to be a bit of an impulsive idiot, you know, just hypothetically speaking. So before I even touched a toe to the ice, I had some shit to do. Namely, travel up the east coast, fight a veritable army of Dilos on my way, make my way through grass that was bloody taller than I was to the sheltered bay by the entrance of the hidden lake, and finally establish a small outpost from which I could gather and craft all the resources and items necessary for a journey to the Arctic. And also survive more than 5 minutes once I got there. Not a bad effort for our first day, and as the sun slowly sinks beyond the horizon, I think we'll set up... Is that more floating rocks? That is more floating rocks. The snow is in view. That's going to be home in a few days. Possibly a few weeks, depending on how things progress. But for now, we're just going to set ourselves up a temporary little outpost. Better get the Barbie fired up first. And that's where my focus remained for the next few in-game hours. I made some decent progress on the outpost, and to my surprise, actually found myself eager to experiment with building for once. Even having used only the basic thatch structures so far, the vanilla ASA building system already seemed like a significant improvement over ASE's. But you recall how we were talking about impulsive idiots? Hypothetically, I kind of want to run across and see if I can get that drop. But I know that's a ridiculous idea. Completely stupid and reckless, and I don't even remember if I can open a blue drop at level, what am I? Level 15? So even if I manage to get across there, I might not even be able to open it. I'd just be risking everything for nothing. Although, I did say this playthrough was about trying new things, didn't I? And I have put a bed down so I can respawn. You know what? Bugger it. Bugger it. We're going to give it a go. I don't have all that much to lose. You know what? I'm going to keep the bowlers out, just in case. Got to keep in mind though, I've only got the 3. I do not... No. I'm not dealing with you. Okay, yep. It's a Kano already. This is going to be a very short trip. Just run, just run, just run. More floating rocks. More floating rocks. Even more oh my god. Like, this is embarrassing. You should be embarrassed. Oh, that's not gonna help at all. Who could have known this was a bad idea? Yeah. Yeah. At the very least, I should have gone during the day, not at night. And I fell in a hole. $14, 10, 9. More floating rocks. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much what I expected, and I thought I heard a wolf there too. I guess the idiocy isn't hypothetical anymore. Yeah, I spawned back in only to get immediately munched by the Kano I'd spotted earlier. And due to the cooldown on my bed, had to respawn further down the coast. Though, in hindsight, maybe this was a good thing, because it led to an epiphany. Level 5, that makes you even more useless than usual. You know what? I just had an idea. Not a particularly clever idea, although if you watched me die the last 2 times, that should come as no surprise. But what if you tried to fight a boss with Pheomias? I've never done that before, and this playthrough is all about trying new things. But hey, my pa always said, if you can't blind them with your brilliance, baffle them with your bullshit. And on the topic of bullshit, Ark had decided it was time to pull some on me. Really? Yeah, defecation is the correct response. I just died twice trying to get to a blue loot drop, and here one's landing in my own bloody backyard. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not like the biggest fan of the tech stuff, but that looks pretty cool. Yeah. Ugh, that doesn't. Why is that all fleshy? Ugh. Okay, opinion retracted. You were cool up until that. What is that? Alright. Level 25 to open. Yep. What level am I? 15. I'd say this was a learning experience and I'd do better. Act less rashly in the future. But that would probably just be more bullshit. Anyway, I did eventually manage to snag my bag, narrowly avoiding perishing to the cold in the process. And as I did the walk of shame back to my shit shack, I conceded that I'd wasted enough time on nonsense. If I wanted to make it to the snow biome sooner rather than later, I needed to get my shit together. Gather resources, craft essential items, gather more resources, construct the raft that was going to be my ticket to the snow biome, gather even more f***ing resources. I forgot how bloody tedious that could be when you don't adjust your harvest rates. And finally, and most importantly, stay locked the hell in. Laser focused. Do not, under any circumstances, allow yourself to be distracted by... Whoops, I forgot to put my clothes back on. Or at least the clothes I have. What was that? Hang on. Why do my boobs do that? Does this t-shirt have an inbuilt push-up bra? Are my boobs prehensile? What? That is strange. That is very strange. Loading rocks and bouncing boobs. I'm gonna be real with you. The distractions are just gonna keep happening. Let's just get on with building the raft. I mean, it's more Star Destroyer than naval ship, but it works for now. Okay, now I need to go up. And unfortunately, The building up part is what I have most difficulty with. I have a bit of a confession to make. I've never been an ambitious ark builder. Normally I make do with either an open air base, yes, that sounds much fancier than calling it a platform, or a rectangle-ish box that could maybe resemble a shed if you squint. Prioritizing aesthetic over function has just never really been something I cared to do. However, I made a promise to myself, and I extend that promise to you watching right now, that over the course of my 365 days on the island, I'm going to make a genuine attempt to build something grander than a shit shack. Not here and now, because I'm not settling in this spot or on this raft permanently, but when the time comes to build my Arctic base, I will go all out. Or at least as all out as my limited skill set will allow. But I actually have to get to my base location first. Surprise, guess who? And you've gone somewhere else. Well, I'm going to ignore that for now, and just wait for it to come back and bite me on the arse later. Literally. But for now, I think my raft, like, it's not the best. It does block my vision a bit, but it'll do. It'll do for now. I just want to build a section. Let's see, where would the best place to put this be? Probably down the bottom. I want to build my little cabin-like area, because if I place walls on the second floor, especially at the back here, I think that's going to obscure my vision even further, and I don't really want to do that. Alright, so I should still be able to get in and out of here, but hopefully it will offer some protection from the dinos. Speaking of which, where did that bloody Carno go? Do not... Oh, well that's a pleasant surprise. I mean, not for the Triceratops, but for me, certainly. That's karma. Oh, does that mean the baby... Should I? I mean, it's level 65. Not great, but it could be worse. Yeah, come with me. Come with me. I don't know if it's worth giving you a name. I don't want to become emotionally attached only to lose you to a level 20 raptor in it, or punch you in the head myself. Yeah, I'm sorry. Things haven't really started off on a great foot here, have they? Traumatized from watching your mum eaten by Carno. Your new guardian punched you in the head right after adopting you. On the bright side, things can only go up from here. Surely. For the baby trike, maybe, but I was about to get a good old whack across the noggin with the old Ark bullshit stick. A bit of background, when ASE was at its peak, not only was I playing it frequently, I was also actively seeking out and consuming Ark content. And while I definitely wouldn't claim I had an encyclopedic knowledge of Ark Survival Evolved, I like to think I was pretty well informed about certain game mechanics. But the same just hasn't been true for ASA. Sure, since its release I've watched a couple of videos, I checked out some of the new creature spotlights, but for the most part I've remained generally ignorant. But one claim I do remember coming across early on was that apparently in ASA there was supposed to be improvements to the Dino AI, which fan-bloody-tastic, that got an enthusiastic thumbs up from me. The Dino following in particular could be absolute dog shit in ASE, but having actually gotten my hands on ASA now and seeing the Dino AI in action for the first time, I'm not so sure that original claim passes the smell test. Yep, you wait right there. No. 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 Where are you going? Why would you walk into the water? Don't you know what's out there? Right, are you on wandering? All these symbols are unfamiliar to me. Behavior? We want behavior. You're not on wandering. But apparently you are on wandering. Stop. I don't know what's going on. If I enable wandering, but then I want to go back in and disable wandering. That wandering doesn't look very disabled to me. I already punched you in the face. I don't want to be accused of neglect too by letting you wander off. Like all of life's problems, I figured the dino following issue would go away if I ignored it long enough, and I had plenty of busy work to keep myself occupied with. More bloody resource gathering, of course, continuing construction on my raft, waiting for my poor, abused and neglected trike baby to mature so I could exploit her and hoard the literal fruits of her labour, and opening my very first loot drop because I was finally a high enough level to do so. Okay, here we go. First ASA loot drop. What treasures await? Oh, those fleshy limbs give me the creeps. Alright, what are we gonna get? What are you gonna give us? I mean, it's not all great stuff, but I'll take the forge. But, like, where is my 7 pieces of flint? Where is my little handheld GPS thingy? Where is my medium crop plot blueprint? This stuff is actually useful. While I kept some of that useful stuff, specifically the forge and the fireplace, the rest got demolished for the resources. Reuse, reduce, recycle and all that, you know? And let me tell you, the weight of all those resources really made me miss my stacking mod. But before I even started this playthrough, I chose to go the completely vanilla route for at least the first 50 or so days. Thankfully though, with the influx of resources, I was able to craft my trike, who I dubbed 65 after the level she was when I tamed her, a saddle. Alright, 65. Look what I've got for you. This is going to be equivalent exchange. I give you a saddle, you are going to give me narco berries. And then it was back to the grind. The Arctic was waiting. I want to take 65 out. Oh, let's give you some melee. And just before we leave, I want to head into the... I haven't unlocked it yet, but the Hidden Valley area. Bloody hell, you're slow. Because sometimes beavers will spawn in there, and beavers can mean beaver dams, which in turn will mean cementing paste. Hopefully, if I'm lucky. Turns out, luck was on my side. Not only did I find 2 beaver dams, each with a nice little stash of cementing paste, the pissed off Castoroides I killed for trying to defend his private property had a baby, which once I actually found the tiny bloody thing, I tamed. Found you. One escort mission later, I remembered the existence of the Explorer note at the top of the nearby hill, so 65 and I made a quick detour to go and grab it. In all the excitement of preparing for my Arctic adventure, I'd overlooked one crucial detail, pumping my fortitude stat, and I hoped the Explorer note would help me in that regard. As 65 and I headed back to the raft, the excitement began to build. All the preparations were now complete, and we could finally say goodbye to our temporary home. The maiden voyage of the HMAS Shitshack was upon us. As the air slowly chilled, I did have to chuck the heater on, but once my temperature was stable, we were all good. Well, mostly good. I was kind of tense waiting for a lead sickness to rise from the depths and reduce my entire existence to rubble in one bite. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but it did get me thinking. Everything's actually going according to plan. And that makes me slightly suspicious. I was right to be slightly suspicious, because despite clear waters and smooth sailing so far, the Ark gods weren't going to allow us to continue our coastal cruising completely unchallenged. We finally made it. Excuse me. We finally made it. This is where I want to build. This area here. But I am a little bit worried that I'm not going to be able to maneuver the raft through there, so we might have to go around. And the second thing that worries me is that I'm going to freeze to death. So I don't know if we're going to stop here permanently yet. I might continue on around the coast until I reach the edge of the snow biome. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh, this is going well. This is going well. Are you able to follow me at all? Okay, okay. And now what? The force of crashing into the world border, which, for the record, I didn't remember was right bloody there, had phased 65 through the walls of the captain's cabin, and she was stuck. My efforts to free her only culminated in me too becoming stuck. I have to give credit here to Past Lee for placing the bed where she did, because in a stroke of luck, I was just able to access it from my position sandwiched between 65's bulk and the thatch ceiling, and using it, I teleported myself back to our outpost. Yes, I dropped all my items in the process, but I'd easily be able to reclaim them upon fast travelling back. It was a minuscule price to pay for my freedom. I honestly don't know how I would have escaped that if the bed hadn't been in reach. Probably would have had to wait for death to come to me. It just would have been a matter of what got me first, starvation or hypothermia. And while those particular foes might darken my doorstep at some point in the future, it would not be this day. So now that we've, actually arrived at our destination, I think the first order of business will be to get some tames, specifically utility dinos, because I am not hand gathering all the resources that I'm going to need. So we'll be on the lookout for the usual cast of characters. But before I do that, I'm even considering maybe it's... Oh, I did not mean to fall into the water. Excuse me, Ixie. But before I even do that, I'm thinking maybe we should just go straight for an RG, because getting an RG will make procuring the other dinos a hell of a lot easier. Securing an RG as my first flying tame would represent yet another deviation from my usual island playthrough playbook. Having been a staunch South Spawn supremacist in my previous Ark adventures, my first flyers had always been Pterodons. And even though I would tame a bunch of the scrawny buggers eventually, it felt like the right move to jump several rungs of the taming ladder here and go straight for an RG. Though that would have to wait a minute, because poor 65 was still stuck, and I needed to remedy that. With the rescue mission having been a success, I turned my attention to construction. Before going to sleep, I gathered and crafted my way through the night. Not only did I want to build up a stockpile of structures in preparation for constructing my base, if I was going to bag myself an RG, I'd also benefit from having a trap of some sort. And in the pre-dawn, piss-filtered light, like seriously, what is up with the ugly yellow lighting? I strategically positioned my trap. Now all I needed was the RG. Which, easier said than done. With 65's help, I cleared the mosh pit several times, claiming a few Hyenodon baby along the way. A move I questioned at the time because why? I didn't need more mouths to feed, but in the end, this would prove to be a genius idea and super advantageous, so I'm going to rewrite history and say I did it deliberately, and no one can prove otherwise. Over the next few hours, I divided my time between resource gathering, structure crafting, mosh pit murdering, and RG hunting, repeating the cycle over and over until... Hello. Now, which was the 150 RG? Pretty sure it was a darker colour. Oh, don't die. Don't die. Yep, you were the 30, weren't you? I can't believe that worked first go. Yeah. I'm not even mad about that one. Well, I won't be mad so long as my RG stays in the trap. Which it has. Excellent. 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 The remaining bird lost interest and apparently chose to peace out, but I did have to dispose of a lone saber-tooth who might have posed a potential threat to my trapped tame. But the biggest threat of all turned out to be me. As I peppered the 150 RG with trank arrows, its health depleted rapidly, dipping so low that I actually went and murdered another saber-tooth so I could try and feed it to the RG, in the hopes that the fresh meat would have a rejuvenating effect. This did not work. Left with no other option, I cautiously continued my trank arrow assault, waiting almost a full 10 seconds between each shot and avoiding the head at all costs, only to get the fright of my bloody life. Oh my god, I thought it died. Nope. Okay, you stay there. I need to go find prime meat. My search for prime meat was over almost before it began. I did kill a single Kentro, but either Kentros don't provide or this specific one didn't drop any prime meat, and that's when I spotted the freshly spawned pack of Hyaenodon. They got me to back off real quick. I knew that if I inadvertently led them back to my unconscious and defenseless RG, they would shred it in seconds. Another solution was required. Could kill the baby RG. Level 1? I mean, it's Arc, so I don't know if that's a bug or a feature. But it does mean... Welcome aboard. This is 65. This is our yet unnamed Hyaenodon pack. And there's a beaver over there too, but he doesn't, or she. They don't have a name either. But you magnificent apex aerial predator. Well, there's only one name that I could possibly give you. Beautiful. Now I need to get you a saddle. Ma'am, the saddle's going to be a while. Not being a high enough level to make an RG saddle was, admittedly, a bit of a hurdle in our use an RG to procure utility dinos plan, but it wasn't a total roadblock. 65 and I, now joined by Wedgie, continued our mosh pit murder spree, eliminating any fresh spawns in the hopes of encouraging a high-level Dodic or Anki to appear. But that's not what happened. Like we're back to this whole thing all over again. Wedgie was a nice surprise, but RG2 was a bit of a deviation from the plan. A good distraction is still a distraction after all, so I told myself no more tames for now, with the exception of utility creatures, of course. By this stage, the novelty of living out of a houseboat was starting to wear thin.
I don't like sand.
Look, the beach bum lifestyle is not for everyone, and if I wanted to achieve my snow-dusted dreams, I needed to get my arse in gear and actually start stockpiling a bunch of stone structures. Which I was absolutely going to do. But the art gods had other ideas. Really? I did say I wanted to tame things that I don't normally tame, and sabers fall into that category, and there's a 150 over there. Not that I'm complaining that much. I mean, who would turn away the opportunity to tame a level 150 dino? But what is it with this bloody phenomenon where I rarely find high-level dinos when I'm actively searching for them, but as soon as I'm eyeballs deep in 6 other, often time-sensitive tasks, Ark will be like, "Here, mate, have 2 high-level Argies. Oh, what's that? You're busy grinding? Boom, max level saber. I couldn't help but notice you're trying to get shit done. Allow me to tempt you with a 145 Rex." Side note, sadly I never got to tame the Rex because it mysteriously vanished. Yeah, around this time I started having a lot of issues with dino spawns, but more on that later. So yes, of course, I tamed the bloody saber, you know, despite my trap not wanting to cooperate. Yeah, that works. You're not No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. But then it was straight back to work. I did accomplish most of what I set out to do. Over the course of the next day, I'd amassed a not too shabby stash of structures, which would be the cornerstones of my snow base. Now though, my biggest issue was transportation. None of my creatures had the weight capacity to haul my newly crafted structures anywhere, except the Argies. Problem? I couldn't yet craft Argie saddles as I was short on both chitin and hide. Solution? Go get some chitin and hide. Easy. Or it was supposed to be. See, around this time, I began to notice something strange occurring with the dino spawns. You remember that level 145 Rex from earlier? That had straight up just disappeared. I justified it vanishing easily enough, like maybe the Hyenodons or the Argie had grouped together and taken it out. But what was harder to justify was that after the disappearance of the Rex, I struggled to find any new creature spawns in or around that area. The notorious mosh pit was uncommonly and unnervingly barren. And as my saber-toothed goblin and I travelled further and further inland, I did not see a single dino. Saw plenty of bloody floating rocks though, and I was left genuinely wondering, are there going to be dinosaurs in my dinosaur game eventually? I did finally stumble across a few creatures, but it wasn't nearly enough. Lacking resources to craft an Argie saddle in the short term was one thing, but if this prolonged game of hide and seek continued, it was going to grind my entire playthrough progress to a halt. Hide is a vital bloody resource. It's not something I could just do without. As the night deepened and the dinos refused to come out and play, Goblin and I turned around and headed back to the houseboat with what resources we had gathered. Unfortunately, I still didn't have enough to craft an Argie saddle, so I unleashed my frustration on the environment until the sun rose. Still, I really needed that Argie saddle. It was the only viable way for me to move my structures. So in the morning, when I was a touch less irritated, I hopped on Goblin and paid the mosh pit another visit. F***ing nothing. I could not find a single bloody creature. I didn't know what to do at this point. I considered performing a dino wipe, but well, the dinos were already wiped. That was the bloody problem. Instead, I went with the tried and true method of turning it off and back on again in hopes that would help. And luckily it seemed to do just that, for a while at least. And even better, I was finally able to scrape together enough resources to make a single Argie saddle. In addition to the utility dinos, I also needed pelts. There was zero chance of me surviving the snow long term without fur armor. I shall dub the frostbite on account of the... See? Zero chance. Goblin helped me mount a rescue mission to retrieve both Frostbite and my bag of meager possessions. Death was not enough to deter us though, and Frostbite and I, after a quick pit stop to drop off Goblin, continued on our quest. Our adventuring took us as far as the Redwoods, and alarmingly, even there, the creature spawn seemed lower than what I remembered them being in ASE. which didn't make collecting the required resources an easy task, but it was one that Frostbite and I accomplished nonetheless, and upon returning to base, I was able to craft a full set of fur armor, and in doing so surpassed the final barrier to settling in the snow. Promoting Frostbite from Travel Mount to Pack Mule, although now that I say that out loud it sounds like more of a demotion, doesn't it? Oh well, the pay's the same. I loaded him up with the structures we'd spent the last 8 days grinding our asses off for, grabbed Chipper, our beaver buddy, because I figured having a wood gatherer would come in pretty bloody handy, and booked a flight to our new, and this time permanent, home. I indulged in a spot of deforestation with Chipper, but there was a valid reason for the destruction. A, I needed space to begin construction on the base, and B, I wanted a clear line of sight around the perimeter so we'd see any nasties trying to creep up on us. Though that seemed unlikely given that nothing was bloody spawning in. Placing the cornerstone piece of my base, I remembered the promise I'd made earlier on, to really test my creative limits and challenge myself to design interesting builds. Or at the very least something that wasn't a bloody box. I didn't know precisely how I was going to achieve that yet, but as my small shelter gradually grew around me, I was definitely thinking about it, and by the time I'd laid the entire foundation, there might have been an idea or two simmering on the old brain back burner. Several round trips between the construction site and my houseboat, plus a pinch more of crafting later, the snow shelter was complete. But if I was going to expand it like I promised I would, I required a metric shit ton more resources, and I wasn't nearly masochistic enough to force myself to collect those by hand. So for the time being, I switched focus from building to taming. Is that a Yudi? First Yudi of ASA. I can't even tell what level you are. I think the next task that I've got to tackle is to tame the gather gang. So just got to get the basic utility dinos, Dodic, Anki, probably a Megaloceros for Thatch, which didn't go particularly well. Even when I extended my search beyond the borders of the snow biome, I could not find a single decent Dodic or Anki. Like, forget high levels, I was struggling to find barely adequate levels. I was literally on the verge of giving up and heading home, when out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a pale blemish against the lush backdrop of the redwoods. A Dodicurus. I didn't have time to stop and check the level. A pack of angry aloes were swiftly closing in. Frostbite courageously swooped in and picked the Dodic right out from under their noses. And turns out it wasn't all that high a level. However, 95, I will take it. For now, I will take it. Considering how long it had taken me to find the bloody thing, I wanted to get my new friend back to base ASAP. Once we arrived, I got her tamed up, named up, and saddled up, and took her for a test drive. Test fly to assess her rock harvesting ability, which was pretty good. 2 thumbs up, better than me armed with only a hatchet at any rate. But I couldn't afford to sit around playing with rocks all day. If I wanted to get my metal production line up and running, which I very much did, an Anki or 2 would be absolutely necessary. So I went to find some, only to get sidetracked by the level 140 woolly rhino right outside my front door. I think we can all agree that taming him was a detour worth taking, but once he too was safely back home, the Anki search continued. And then ceased briefly again because I had a sudden intrusive thought that led me to remembering treasure maps were an actual thing now, and I was curious as to how they were different from regular loot drops, or if they were different at all. Let's try these. How do I do this? E? 5,329 meters. Okay, what about you two? Well, that's a bit closer. I wonder if you get better loot from these than you do regular loot drops, or if it's, you know, roughly equivalent. Oh, well, it turned green. Digging. Okay, well I guess you don't have to be that close to the marker then. Ooh. Ooh. Well, that was a little bit more generous than I expected it to be. But after that, the Anki search resumed for real. And resumed. And resumed. And f***ing resumed. I wasted hours searching for an Anki. In desperation, I even ventured over to Herbivore Island, which I'd been trying to avoid for the simple fact that it was a place I frequented when playing ASE, because I knew in that previous iteration of Ark, it could be a bit of an Anki hotspot. But nothing. Over the course of the next few days, I terrorized the inhabitants of Herbivore Island, reducing the otherwise peaceful sanctuary to a gory, blood-soaked battlefield. Still, not a single bloody Anki spawned. There are moments in life where the correct course of action is to swallow your pride and concede that your strategy just ain't working. This was one of those moments. Or it should have been. Instead, out of spite, I chose to stick around and vent my vexation on the local fauna. At least until I got bored of that too. Aggravated and ankyless, Frostbite and I made the long journey back north, consoling ourselves with the thought that maybe, in our absence, a high-level Anki or two had magically appeared beneath the boughs of the frozen forest that bordered our home. A new day, a new search for an Anki begins. I keep hearing a sheep. Where is it? Not you, is it? You're not imitating a sheep? It's Anki time now. Sheep time will come later. Over the next few days, my aim was to prioritize building, but that didn't mean I was going to abandon my Anki quest altogether. And thus, before donning my hard hat, I set out on one more search. But what was supposed to be a quick sprint around the block ended up being an endurance event, one that lasted well into the night. And the best contender I found in all that time was... P1, get in there, quick, 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 grab. Nope, that's not the one to grab. Oh, it's only a 60. Nope. Aha, gotcha. I chose to compromise on the level, but the Anki I'd found was incredibly underwhelming. I knew I could do better if I just had more time, so I told myself I could do one more lap around Blue Obelisk Mountain. If I didn't find a higher level, I'd shelve the Anki search for now in favour of focusing on building. And soon enough, my persistence was rewarded. Oh, and what are you gonna be? Level 10? 25? 95. That's good enough. That's good enough. I will take you. Let's go. With the crap that I've been finding, that may as well be a 150. If I was willing to compromise on a level 60, I was even more willing to do so for a 95. But in order to claim my consolation prize, I first had to kick the level 60 out of my trap. You're free to go, sir. You, on the other hand, are not. You're not going anywhere. Doing my best impression of a helicopter parent, I hovered close by as my Anki tamed up. I've played this game, well, not this, you know what I mean. I've played Ark enough that I didn't trust the Ark gods not to spawn a pack of direwolves right on top of my sleeping Anki's head. After everything I'd gone through to find him, I wasn't about to let anyone or anything cause him harm. Alright, bring it over here. Bring it in. Alright, and there is only one name that a shitty Anki like you deserves. As we did with Shanky's new siblings before him, we went out on a test run to harvest resources. You know, just really cements those family bonds. And as the sun set on yet another day, I breathed a sigh of relief. The Gather Gang was now complete and settled into their new home. And it was about time those bludgeoning freeloaders started contributing to the household. We had a construction project to construct. I may not have been a beach bob any longer, but my architectural achievements were kind of giving that impression. And I wanted to fix that, even if fixing that would be no mean feat. Well, the whole fixing that process was grindy and grueling, or at least it seemed that way to me, someone who was more accustomed to laying down a foundation and calling that a finished structure, but it was also really rewarding. Having all the new pieces to play with, in combination with the expanded range of snap points, plus the streamlined building UI itself, fostered a much more interesting and enjoyable building experience than vanilla ASE ever provided. And in what might have been a first for me when it came specifically to building in Ark, I was having fun. Or I was, right up until the moment the Ark gods woke up, chose spite, and shoved a giant middle finger right in my bloody face. Are you kidding me? I mean this with all sincerity. Genuinely, with a 10-foot cactus that ejaculates fiberglass particles. Are you kidding me? I spent days looking for a half-decent level Anki. And you go and spawn one literally right outside my base? Nah. Nah. You can bugger right off with that. I mean, I'm going to tame it. I am absolutely going to tame it. But nah. Nah. I absolutely hate this game. It's a shame that I love it so much. Get in there. Don't even have my trank arrows on me, do I? They were back this way. Yeah, yeah. Shit, I forgot about that. No. It took me too long to find this AP. I'm not losing it now. Come here. No, absolutely not. Where are your mates? You know what? You're going too, just in case. Shut up. Not gonna lie, I was kind of pissed, but silver linings and all that, I now had a 140 Anki taming, so I just spun around, returned the gesture by flipping the Ark gods off over my shoulder as I flew away, and kept right on building. Well, after several days of resource gathering, crafting, and building repeated over and over and over again, I've at least got the skeleton of a tower here, but I need to go and do something else before I lose my mind. I'm enjoying the building a lot more than I thought I would, playing around with all the new pieces, but yeah. Still, you can have too much of a good thing, so it's time to go and do something else. And I think that something else is going to be to try and find some of my boss fighters. As a reward for my building efforts, I was allowed to go out and make some new friends. And if I know anything about friendship, it's that it definitely blossoms when one party is stripped of their agency and confined to a small, tight space. So I took my great Anki, or Granky for short, who I'd recently tamed, and sourced the materials I'd need to craft up some cryopods. While on the hunt for polymer, we found an ovis, which by itself is hardly worth noting, but this particular ovis was a single parent, and the two babies trailing it were male and female. I was not about to pass up the opportunity to avoid making veggie cakes, so I euthanized the ram as humanely as possible and ushered the poor little orphan lambs to their new home. Not long after which, we crafted up those cryopods and prepared to head south. But it wasn't long at all into our journey that I spy a potential first victim, no, not victim, new friend. Fortunately, the loot drops on the island had been pretty generous up till this point, so I had some beer on hand. Even more fortunately, I had an amount in excess of that which I'd need to tame a Calicotherium. Look, it is not my fault that the hotbar slot where I keep my spyglass is the same hotbar slot used to feed passive tames, okay? Oh, you idiot. Should I attempt this while drunk? Not the worst idea I've ever had. Now we can be drunk together. Frostbite, as the designated driver, got both myself and our new Cali friend back home after our brief bender. What a legend. Once I was rehydrated and recovered, we headed south again. It was a bit of a trek, but hopefully one that would be worth the gas, because the creatures I was looking to tame spawned far more frequently down there. And those creatures, joining my boss fighter lineup alongside the Phiomia, would be a legion of Carbonemus and Iguanodon. A legion that was so much more difficult to recruit for than I'd initially anticipated. To give you a quick peek behind the curtain, the entire time I was building, I'd been experiencing spawn issues again, and they would persist for the remainder of this playthrough. I won't bore you with all the details, but just know that every, 20 to 30 minutes, I'd have to stop and do a dino wipe and or log out and back in again. Otherwise, creatures would just stop spawning altogether. As you can probably imagine, this made trying to find decent tames a bit of a nightmare. I did come across a unicorn though, so that was cool, I guess. And I ended up taking this as a sign because soon after, my luck began to change for the better, and I was able to find a few high-level Phiomia and Carbonemus. But worryingly, I could not find a single Iguanodon, let alone a high-level one. After days of dealing with the bullshit spawn situation and with very little to show for it, I packed it in and went home. There was no question I would have to get back into the taming trenches eventually, but my tolerance for Ark's shenanigans were edging towards non-existent, and if I didn't stop and take a bit of a breather, I would 100% throw a toddler-worthy tanty. Hello, children. I have returned from my misadventures. Kinda sucked, to be honest. 2 out of 10. Wouldn't recommend to friends and family. Alright, let's see what I did manage to grab. Did we only get 2 Carbonemus? You can hang on to these guys for me. Alright, Phiomius. We only got 2 of those as well. And we also got our mystical, magical unicorn, which I will probably put here and never ever use again. I gave myself the night off to cool off and use the free time to do some inventory organising, a task which could have feasibly taken days by itself given how much crap I'd accumulated by this point, but taming had to remain my top priority. If I wanted a mutated army with which to face the bosses, I would need as much time as I could possibly carve out to breed one. It is day 28. I am going to give myself until day 30 to get together as many tames as I can. I'm not too optimistic seeing how the spawning situation is, but I'm going to try, and if I can't find any Iguanodons at all, I'm just going to go with a different herbivore. Bolstered by the thought of beating down a giant angry ape with some piddly piggies, I charted another flight south, a journey which included brief stopovers to dig up some treasure. Why is it in the sky? Within dig range, really.
Dig up, stupid.
Okay, well apparently we're just going to dig up the treasure that's in the sky from underground. Makes perfect sense. Yoink. And tame a 145 Theri. I mean, I don't really need you. But I kind of want you. Frostbite, come. We're going on a Theri hunt. If you get stuck, mate. Can you not, please? Do you have those? Arriving at our destination under the cover of darkness, Frostbite and I made a pact. This time, there would be no mercy. Demon mode engaged. If you weren't with us, you were against us. And if you were against us, well... And demon mode was kind of effective, to an extent. I may not have tamed the creatures that I needed and was actually looking for, but I absolutely wasted time taming several that, while nice to have, were completely superfluous to my plans. Many carrots. I think I have some back at base when I make the trip for a horse. Alright, horse, we're having a bit of a stamp break. Do not run off anywhere. Don't you dive off that cliff. It's not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do it. What did I tell you about cliffs? Frostbite, I love you, but you are so bloody slow. I do wonder if my taming rate is perhaps a little bit high. But we did set our sights back on the boss creatures. Eventually. Yeah, you're not having that. I want that. Where's my beer? Yep. Let's crack open a cold one. Probably not worth wasting a... Oh, I did it again. Well, I hope I got a male and female, because there won't be any more Calicotherium taming unless I find some more beer. And they're not mate boosted. Of course they're not mate boosted. I don't even care what level or gender it is. I see otter, I must tame otter. Hi. Alright, let's go. No more interruptions, she says, as if there isn't going to be a million more interruptions. We might have taken the scenic route, but the important thing is we got there in the end. And surprisingly, we were fairly successful. With everything except Iguanodons, that is. Throughout the duration of my visit down south, only half a dozen or so had spawned, and all of them had been low level. Oh, Iguanodon. Ugh. What do we reckon? Like a 50 this time? No, even worse. Here we go again. Yep, about what I expected. I mean, it's getting hurt by a Dilo, so what are the chances of it being a good level? Let's see what trash we got this time. Okay, brace for disappointment. Oh, I didn't brace hard enough. In desperation, I broke my own rule. You see, if the max level for dinos on a given map is 150, I normally refuse to tame anything below a 130. Yes, I had already broken that rule previously. To reiterate, this playthrough is partly about shaking up my regular routine, but this situation was different. These creatures were supposed to be boss fighters. Not only that, but they were bloody terrible creatures to be fighting bosses with in the first place. If I was going to stand any chance, I needed the absolute best starting stats possible. That's a difficult thing to achieve when the best you can find is like level 50. So in the end, I settled for a 120, the highest level Iguanodon I'd seen so far by a ridiculously wide margin. But I held on to that tiny slither of hope that I'd get lucky and stumble across something better. However, as the days passed and the cycle of destruction or assimilation continued, the closest I came to something better was a level 115. Come on, give me something good. I mean, I'll settle again. Yeah, go away, Gigantoraptor. I want to tame one of you eventually, but not now. And I think that was the tipping point. Between the spawn issues, the low levels, the stupid bloody weather that forced me to shelter in the water for hours or risk dying of hypothermia, and ceaselessly pacing up and down the same damn stretch of river, it broke something within me. And so began my slow, spiraling descent towards madness. And this little piggy went wee, all the way to the abattoir. I will have you. You shall be mine. I'm going to sit right up your clucker until you land. That's it. No. Wrong way. Land. Land, damn you. Oh, Pterodon, oh, Pterodon. Your scrawny back. I drank you out, reportedly. Angry dinos we will flee. What's the opposite of rage quitting? You know, where you just slide off your chair, melting into a puddle of despair. I can't even make a joke about accidentally rhyming there. I'm too upset. I don't even want to kill you with the RG. I want to shoot you in the face. Come here. Right in the eyeball. Only to be yanked back from the brink of insanity at the very last moment by an angel. It's about bloody time. I almost want to cry. Locking in the level 135 Iguanodon marked the beginning of the end of my search. While I stuck around south for a few more in-game hours, this garnered me like zilch, zero, nothing. So ultimately I called it quits and left. So I might have snagged myself a cheeky Procoptodon tame back near home because why the hell not? Procops are a fairly rare spawn on the island, or at least they were in ASE, so in this instance I was happy to grab a level 125. Oh, that is one ugly ass trap. Hey, but hey, if it works. Alright, we're gonna go in here. We're gonna do this, and this, and this. Hey, it may be ugly, but it bloody works. I knew I was saving all these mushrooms for something. Frostbite assisted our new friend Boomer back home, so he could sit around doing nothing all day like all my extraneous tames. And then it was time. Taming was now behind us. Breeding for the boss fights could begin. Take 5 minutes to breathe, because everything is a disorganized mess. And it is making my blood pressure shoot up. But what I really need to do is continue building and start breeding. And I can do those sort of simultaneously. However, while I have a number of high-level Carbonemus, I'm not thrilled with the Iguanodon that I've got. All of them are relatively low level. And then the Phiomia, I've only got 3. I thought I had about 5. I'm honestly considering, because I don't have any Iguanodon saddles at this point either, because I was hoping to get some, you know, at least Mastercraft or something like that from drops. But I am wondering if I should swap out the Iguanodon for Parasaurs, because I do have a couple of Ascendant Parasaur saddles as well as an Ascendant Parasaur blueprint. But like, at the very least I can check out my turtles. Alright, so you have got the highest health. Now, who has the highest melee? So you've got highest melee so far, and you've got, ooh, 465. And you're male and female. Okay, so you are health, you are melee. Alright, that's a start. That is a start.
Nope.
I keep forgetting cryo sickness is a thing. Oh, the mods have spoiled me so much. Speaking of mods spoiling me, I'm gonna have to get an Oviraptor, aren't I? Because I don't have a little doohickey machine that'll pick up the eggs for me. Something else I forgot about. The realization that I'd need an Oviraptor hit me like an Equus kick to the guts. My latest taming misadventure had come perilously close to inducing a mental break, and I did not want to go through that again. And as the cherry on top of the shit sundae, I'd already murdered multiple Oviraptors in my frenzied and pretty futile attempt to encourage high-level creatures to spawn. But without mods, it was something that had to be done. So, in deference to my mental health, I put a pause on more taming until morning, and in a rare display of me managing my time wisely, I spent the night in the company of the Gather Gang, farming the resources I'd need to expand my building operation. Morning arrived far too soon, and using the dawn light to guide us, Frostbite and I travelled the by now well-worn path south. The first creature I spotted was sadly not an Oviraptor, but instead a high-ish level Barry, which it's not like I was going to refuse that. I need to get that, don't I? I need to get that. I also came across another high-level Phiomia on Herbivore Island who we quickly added to our ranks. As nice a surprise as that was though, it wasn't an Oviraptor, and of course, now that I was actively seeking them out, they'd become impossible to find. Then I ran into another problem. See, somewhere around day 35, my footage got stuck like this. The audio recorded with no issue, but the video was literally just this. You didn't miss much though, only the culmination of this entire bloody search. Yet while my video was AWOL, I finally found an Oviraptor, and not just any Oviraptor, but one that had an opposite gender baby. And in an epic display of multitasking, I tamed both while heroically fending off an entire nest of Titanoboa. I just don't have footage of any of it. So in lieu of that, please enjoy my photorealistic CGI recreation of the entire event. Finally have an Oviraptor. Move, Dodo. Yeah, I saw you. Trying to be a sneaky snake. Nothing gets past me. Or except that. Except that. Come here. Upon returning home, we jump-started the breeding, persuading my newly acquired Oviraptors to take up the menial task of egg collecting, but of course I didn't have any bloody footage of that either, did I? Thankfully though, when I started recording the next day, the video issue had resolved itself, and while the breeding was burgeoning in the background, I channeled my energy into building. At the very least, I wanted to get a rudimentary storage room equipped because I had weapons and tools and structures and items strewn across several different inventories by this point, and my patience for sorting through all of them when I needed to find that one specific item was about to snap. In addition, we were still also lacking the basic amenities of gas, power, and water, so they featured prominently on my to-do list as well. Our progress felt glacial, but eventually Frostbite and I carted the bulk of our items and structures into the tower. I even got a little kitchen set up going. And as the sun lazily set, for the first time in 37 days, I truly felt like I was home.
How's the serenity?
Because my creatures had been breeding in the background the entire time I was playing Inventory Hot Potato, both Oviraptors were, by now, completely weighed down by eggs. If we were successfully going to hatch any of them, I'd need to get a few things in order first. A. Install a heating system. B. Hire a professional midwife. And C. Wait until the daylight hours when the temperature would be ever so slightly warmer. It's not like I was going to be bored in the interim. I may have also been not so momentarily lured away from my objective by the seductive siren song of a max-level mammoth. Ooh, it's a nice little treat outside my base. And you know how this goes by now. Kill, 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 train, KO, feed, kill, guard, get bored, tame, saddle, test drive. What I only meant to be a minor detour to tame a mammoth turned into a day-long harvest fest, which was great for my building project, not so great for the breeding one though. So the next day I put the tool belt down and exchanged it for a pair of medical scrubs. It was time to start hatching babies. Like all childbirth, this majorly sucked ass. For one, the base of the tower was not a great nursery substitute and space was a bit of an issue. Second, the bodies of the useless babies were too small to harvest, and after a while the delivery room was littered with infant corpses. Yeah, my medical license is definitely getting revoked after this. Third, my midwife kept trying to eat the baby corpses, and when I politely asked her to cease, she stormed off in a huff and categorically refused to return to work. Where are you going now? Oh my god. Yep, up the stairs, that's exactly what I want you to do. Yeah, this way, stupid. Oh. Straight down, just straight down. I am very rapidly losing patience. Come here. Oh, back down the stairs, of course. Of course, yep. Now you find the doorway. Come here. I'm done. I'm done. No more. You're staying there. Freeze to death, starve to death for all I care. I did hire a substitute, but between you and me, I don't think she was qualified.
I don't believe that man's ever been to medical school.
In spite of the inconveniences, we persisted. Even built ourselves an industrial grill amidst the chaos. I mean, what else was I supposed to do with all that baby meat? But as the number of babies multiplied and the amount of space inside the tower decreased, it became readily apparent that I'd need to move the breeding operation to a different location. Much earlier, as I'd been working on the tower itself, I'd had the idea to build a small, stable-like structure to house my harvesting creatures, something that would offer shelter but was open enough that they'd be easily accessible. The idea was still solid, so I set about bringing it to life, though for the foreseeable future, its function would serve more as a nursery than a stable. Oh, and just as a side note, as I was already building, I put some work into finishing the tower as well. By the time the nursery stable was complete, or, complete-ish, I had bred up perfect pairs, meaning both the male and the female had the exact same stat distribution of Pheomia, Carbonemus, and Parasaurs. Even the Iguanodon weren't too far behind. For once. But this slow, steady pace wasn't going to cut it anymore. I wanted to crank things up a gear. Having a perfect pair of each of my boss fighting creatures was a good start. However, it was just that, a start. As a general rule, the more female creatures you have producing offspring, the quicker you'll acquire your mutations. I didn't have the space to operate a large-scale breeding operation, but I figured with the breeding and baby growth rates I was rocking, 6 or so females of each species would work fine. So getting my oviraptors to assume the position, I left my mating pairs to do what they needed to do, which gave me a bit of downtime. I mean, I could have waited around and watched, but that probably would have been weird. Instead, I did a bit of basic housekeeping, like making beer and drugs, exiling any undesirables from our tribe's domain, working the forges, and collecting the skins of our fallen enemies to hoard for later use. You know, just the regular domestic chores you do on the daily. Because there was already a mass breeding event underway, I took advantage of my oviraptor's generosity and started combining the stats of some of my other tames. Kill 2 pterodons with 1 stone, as the saying goes. But chores are never-ending, and I had to do something to keep myself entertained while I hung around base waiting for the progenitors of my boss army to mature, so the busy work continued. As I was out on a resource run, I encountered a future friend outside base. I bet you can't guess what happened next. Where are you, my horse, cow... Oh, there you are. Rhino friend. Oh, you... Oh, you absolute idiot. Absolute idiot. I need to start keeping my spyglass in another slot, I think, because that is the 3rd bloody time I've done that. Don't drink it, don't drink it, don't drink it. No, my stamina is down because I'm drunk by accident. Over the next few days, we admittedly fell into a bit of a rut, reliving the same routine of patrolling, crafting, organising, harvesting, egg incubating, murdering, building, looting, and taming ad infinitum. Or at least it felt infinitum. In reality, it was only about a week. But by the end of that week, I had also reached the end of my tether when it came to breeding without mods. There was no bloody chance I was entering the mutation era without some sort of assistance. It's day 49. I promised myself I wouldn't add mods until day 50, but, like, that's close enough. What do you reckon, Frostbite? Are we close enough to add mods yet? Yeah, you think so too. I only added 3 mods because while I clearly have no compunctions using them, I did want to retain the vanilla experience as much as possible. A week's worth of harvesting meant I was rich with resources and had more than enough to craft the Dino storage mod items. I installed the benches inside the nursery stable, arranged my dinos into the optimal mating position, and then gave them permission, nay, the vehement encouragement, to get their freak on. And their freak was pretty bloody potent, it turns out, because it wasn't long at all before we started seeing our first mutations. But a mutation of a single stat in only one of our dinos was merely the prologue. In order to put up an actual, genuine fight against the island bosses, we would need to stack those mutations over and over again until all our creatures were as strong as we could possibly make them. After multiple in-game days and many real-life hours of babysitting my tames as they dropped mutations, I decided to treat myself to a little resource run to break up the monotony. And that's when I discovered the existence of a secret underground breeding program that had apparently been operating in the shadows right under my base. This was not my fault. What the hell happened? I mean, maybe this bodes well for the boss fight? I still don't know how exactly that happened, but at the very least, the Megalodon got to enjoy a nice pork dinner and a show. After my brief harvesting expedition, it was back to breeding. Mutating had been pretty damn successful so far, and even though I was starting to exhibit the early signs of cabin fever, my desire to keep the ball rolling far outweighed a bit of restlessness. By the early hours of day 55, however, the restless itch under my skin refused to be ignored any longer, but I thought perhaps there was a way to placate it. I instructed my mammoth and Tundra my OG Dodic to start clearing some land. We were going to expand the base. But the world outside was rather hostile. Or, it could be when dinos decided they actually wanted to spawn in. And to protect our tribe mates from it, the first thing we needed to do was build a wall. When the border was secure, I returned to my roots and built a good old platform, which I would use for breeding. Yeah, my solution to the problem of breeding boredom was more breeding. Brilliant. But jokes aside, with my mutations progressing better than expected, I could now start looking ahead. The boss fights were of course the end goal, but there were a couple of unskippable steps before that. Boss fights required artifacts. Artifacts could only be located in caves. Caves were a bunch of bullshit. I didn't want to deal with that bullshit alone, and from this fear sprung the idea of breeding cave fighters. And while I was at it, I thought, bugger it, I may as well chuck some other dinos in the lineup as well. Why not? So I set about equipping my new breeding station, pausing periodically to check in on my original breeding station and keep those mutations flourishing. And with that, my life as a semi-sentient ping-pong ball began. I did nothing but bounce back and forth between points A and B for days, ensuring everyone was happy and fed and pumping out babies. Yes, the Ark gods truly do give their toughest challenges to their strongest soldiers. I'm not even sure it's possible to dress up that sort of tedium as being in any way fun or exhilarating, so there's really not much more left to say, except that maybe given the sheer number of babies I murdered during this period, I should probably be on some sort of watch list. But before the feds disappeared me, I was determined to fight the bosses. And this is where I have to admit that I haven't been entirely honest with you. I may have done a tiny little lie by omission. You see, for all the time I've spent playing Ark, I have hardly any experience with boss fights. The truth is, I just didn't care for them that much. I never wanted the boss loot, and as a proud tech tier hater, I had zero interest in unlocking the tech engrams, so I seldom bothered. The boss fights weren't what made Ark fun for me. As a consequence of that, I barely interacted with the caves either. Some of them I used to farm resources and loot or tame specific cave-dwelling creatures, but I wasn't going to delve deeper to retrieve artifacts I'd never bloody use. So yes, while in theory, I know the procedure. I know what steps I have to take in order to reach the boss arenas. In reality, it's a path I've rarely travelled. But that was going to change. It is the early hours of day 70. So I've been at this bloody breeding thing since what, day 50? And let me show you the progress I've made. Over here, with our Carbonemus, we have 13 health mutations, 14 melee. The pigs haven't been doing so great. In all that time, we've only got 6 health and 9 melee. So I'm even less confident in this boss fight than I was before, if that's even possible. Then we got our parasaurs. We've done pretty well. We got 14 health, 17 melee. And then the Iguanodons, who, like, despite me not getting any particularly high levels, they're just going to be my backup anyway, so that's why I've been breeding them. And we've got 10 health and 15 melee. Now, I could keep going and, you know, try and get, I know, close to 20 mutations on both health and melee for all of them. But, while I didn't have any concrete plans for this 365 days playthrough, I did kind of have a vague idea that I wanted to do the Gamma, the Beta, and then the Alpha boss, and then the Overseer. Just one Overseer, I'm not doing that 3 bloody times, but do one of those sort of every roughly 90 days, so about every quarter. If I want to achieve that, I've got to get my arse in gear and start getting some stuff ready. So despite me not having as many mutations that I would probably like, I think it's time to turn my attention elsewhere, because like I need to keep taming. I've got myself a couple of Diodon. Like I wasn't originally going to use either Diodon or Udis in the boss fight. I was just going to go straight pigs, turtles, and parasaurs just for the shits and giggles basically. But like at this point, I think I need all the advantages I can get. So I've got 3 Diodon that I can choose from. I haven't got any high-level males yet, but I found 3 females. I haven't found a single high-level Udi. Not one. So I need to try and find myself one of those. And then number 2 on my list is going to be to do some cave runs, because if I'm going to be doing boss fights, I obviously need to grab myself the bloody artifacts. And that kind of segues nicely into the third thing I need to do, which is a shitload of looting. Like, the caves will help me there, but I've also been breeding up my Pteranodons. I'm just trying to make these guys nice all-rounders. I don't think I've got there quite yet. I've only got, what mutations did you have? I think like two each into health, stam, weight, and melee. But my initial thinking was to use a mutated Pteranodon to get around the map as quickly as possible, picking up as many loot drops as possible, because I'm going to need some high-level saddles. I've got a few. Let's head over here. I've got some Ascendant, Phiomia, Parasaur, and I think I even had Carbonemus saddles. But I would like to outfit the entire army with Ascendant if I can. I do think I have blueprints as well. Let's go check that out. There we got Phiomia. Yeah. So 96 armor, like not too bad. And I think I had a Parasaur one as well. Yeah. And then a Carbonemus. No Hang on a sec. Who was going to tell me that you need cementing paste to make a Carbonemus saddle? Or was I just supposed to find that out from a blueprint? Shit. Here I am thinking that all the resources I need to gather are hide, fiber, wood, that sort of basic crap. But no, apparently I need cementing paste as well. Well, I suppose that leads nicely into the fourth thing that I need to do, and that is resource gathering. And then in addition to all of that, we need to both grow and then level up our boss armies. So if I want to get all that done by around day 90, I've really got to start now. First off, we enlisted some new recruits to assist us. I think for the underwater caves, I'm just going to use this baryonyx that I used to massacre some sharks earlier on, because you did a good job, buddy. So you get to prove yourself once again in the caves. Let's give you a bit more into health, and we'll go melee. And I've also picked out just a female saber-tooth that I grabbed from the breeding lineup up there. Here we go. The dream team. I haven't named them yet. If you want names, you gotta earn them. So prove yourselves. Then, patting ourselves on the back for delivering such an inspiring pep talk, Frostbite and I flew off to deal with all the other preparations. I flatly refused to take my best weapons and gear into the caves. I'd fallen through the mesh far too many times in ASE caves to risk it, so the second best equipment I owned would have to suffice. But the stash of items I'd accumulated so far wouldn't be enough to see me through all of the caves, plus the boss battles themselves. I needed more. I wanted better. And this is where my Jekyll and Hyde double life began. By day, I was actually responsible Ark player and whiled away the hours between dawn and dusk, dutifully prepping for the adversity ahead. But by night, I transformed into, not actually Lee, the greediest, most ravenous loot goblin to ever darken the island skies. Though any threatening aura I may otherwise have possessed was severely undercut by my stupid fat pterodon. The cycle of work by day, loot by night continued all the way up until day 73. The preparation work I'd be doing was mostly complete by then, and it was time to attempt my first cave run. Frostbite and I gave my Sabertooth a dink to the entrance of the Skylord cave, experiencing an entirely misplaced and utterly unearned sense of confidence. I dove in headfirst. No partner to protect me, no sleeping bags at the ready, my health potions and antidotes securely tucked away in Frostbite's pocket. No prizes for guessing how this ended. I'll be back for you in a minute, Otter. Fortunately, the Skylord cave wasn't all that far from my base, a journey that was even shorter when made with a Pterodon instead of an Argy. Before my second run, I took a deep breath, dialed the enthusiasm down about 100, and actually put some bloody thought into what I was doing. And surprise, surprise, this attempt went a lot smoother. I retrieved my items, then the artifact with relative ease, and made my way out back to my waiting tribe mates. Alright, if we ignore the disaster that was the first run, that didn't go too badly. After saying goodbye to our Pterodon at base, hoping her services would not be needed again anytime in the near future, Frostbite and I made for Carnivore Island, where the second cave was located and the artifact of the Devourer was concealed. The first challenge came in the form of a body of water that had flooded the entrance, cutting off our access to the wider cave network. This was so easy to clear that I didn't even need to employ the baryonyx I'd bought as backup. After wading through the water, we slowly, steadily, and most importantly, smartly, descended deeper and deeper into the cave. Yoink. Alright. Not too shabby. I think I redeemed myself from my first cave. And were rewarded for our patient persistence with another artifact. Now we just had to climb out of the bloody big hole we found ourselves in. And it was out of the hole and into the fire because the third cave we hit up was the home of the artifact of the Massive, also known as the Lava Cave, which ended up being far less challenging than I anticipated. Maybe I'm just misremembering. Admittedly, my knowledge of these caves from ASE is spotty at best, but the difficulty curve of the Lava Cave in ASE seemed more like a slight incline, at least during this initial experience. Can you make this jump? To be honest, I don't really trust you to. Alright, ready? Stop doing your level up animation. Go. Okay. We good? One perk of it being a relatively quick run though was that we could swiftly move on to the fourth cave and the artifact of the hunter, which I'm embarrassed to admit took a very long time to locate and was exacerbated by the fact that I refused to swallow my pride and search up the precise coordinates. Night probably wasn't the best time to do this. Come on, cave, you gotta be around here somewhere, surely. None of that looks very cave entrancey. Sure, there was a cave around here. I'm sure of it. At what point do I just give up and look up the coordinates? Turtle, have you seen a cave by any chance? Could you perhaps point me in the right direction? No? Okay. Thanks anyway. Honestly, once I bloody found it, this was probably the easiest cave we'd attempted so far. We navigated through facing very little resistance, and what resistance there was effectively dealt with by my Sabertooth. She was well on her way to earning herself that name. But there's no rest for the wicked, so when we emerged with the artifact on the hunter, it was straight on to cave number 5 and the artifact of the pack. You know, I think there's a question to be asked about the kind of impact experiencing adrenaline-fueled, death-defying hijinks in otherworldly, subterranean environments can have on a person. What sort of existential thoughts might they elicit? What kind of profound changes could they inspire? I didn't enter the Cave of the Pack with the expectation of having my worldview fundamentally shifted, but far underground, within poking distance of the planet's core, I realized something about myself. I f***ing hate this cave. No, like, really, genuinely loathe it. I spent the first half of my time in it running around thinking to myself, I have no memory of this place. Like, none at all. And I spent the second half of my time going around in circles, doubling back, and repeatedly getting lost. All the emphasis on repeatedly. I don't know what it was about this cave specifically. I just could not navigate it to save myself. At the end of my wits, I resorted to blindly grappling around in the hopes that I'd luck out and accidentally stumble across the artifact, and somehow that's exactly what happened. Finally. I got so disorientated in this cave. It's been years since I've done this. And honestly, I did worse than I thought I would. Do not ask me how I found it or what route I took to get there, because I don't have answers to those bloody questions. But now that the artifact of the pack was finally in my possession, I had to get it out. Yeah, I got lost again, though thankfully nowhere near as badly as on the journey in. Oh shit, am I going to remember the way out of here? Oh, yes. Thank you. We did it, Dodo. We did it. Took way longer than it should have, but we did it. Honestly, the real MVP of this spelunking adventure was my Sabertooth. She had saved my life on multiple occasions, even at the risk of her own. In the Cave of the Pack, she 100% proved her mettle and had more than earned herself a name, which I forgot to give her because I got distracted realizing that the next cave I was planning to go to was the Cave of the Immune. Oh no, no. Hang on a sec. I'm pretty sure that's the Redwood Cave, for which I need the gas mask. Skipping the redwoods for the moment, we travel towards the foot of the volcano and the cave that hid the artifact of the clever. Compared to the previous cave, this one was a breeze. In no time at all, we were claiming the artifact, flipping a 180 and breezing our way back out. Because the cave loot drops had been relatively kind to us so far, we returned to base briefly to deposit the spoils of our spelunking. As the Redwoods cave was still beyond our reach, we would instead take to the seas. There were 2 underwater caves we needed to conquer, the Brute and the Cunning. And in addition to obtaining the artifacts, we would also have the chance to collect the remaining black pearls we needed to craft ourselves the gas mask. Located on the west coast, and therefore the closest one to home, we set off in the direction of the Cave of the Brute. And it was hardly worth the trip. I mean, yes, I got the artifact, but the entire experience was underwhelming. Oh look, our first creatures! I think the only creatures I saw the entire time I was in the cave were 2 Megalodon, 1 Manta, and a single Ammonite. There were certainly no black pearls to be found in this cave. Disappointed, we shot straight across the map from west coast to east and took the plunge into the Cave of the Cunning, which boasted more inhabitants than the Cave of the Brute, but was still a lot less populated than what I remember in ASE. We did manage to score some black pearls though, so yay.
Bruh.
With both artifacts and pearls in hand, we returned to base and finally crafted ourselves the gas mask we needed for yet another caving expedition. The best way I would describe the Cave of the Clever, like setting aside the need for the gas mask, is easy but annoying. The cave itself wasn't difficult to traverse, but it was teeming with bugs and leeches, which would have been great if I was in need of chitin and or leech blood, but I wasn't. All I was there for was the artifact, and it seemed like every bloody invertebrate on the damn island was determined to stop me. But in the end, we did claim our prize, and with that, it was 9 artifacts down, 1 to go. So after initially buggering up and then completing the Skylord cave, I chose to leave the second snow cave until last. My reasoning was that it was the closest to base and would be the quickest to get back to should my performance go similarly to my first snow cave attempt. I wanted to get the further away and what I thought at the time were harder caves under my belt before wrapping things up with the final snow cave. I had completely forgotten that the ice cave, the frozen hellscape where the artifact of the strong resided, was widely regarded as the most difficult cave on the island. Astride my Sabertooth, who had by this point earned herself the name Gremlin in honor of her feral tenacity, I charged into the cave. No thoughts, head empty, assuming this was going to play out comparably to all the previous caves. I assumed wrong. Gremlin and I skidded around a corner, only to come face to face with an arsenal of claws and teeth. We desperately tried to escape, pushing back towards the cave entrance while dodging bear bites and ape assaults. For a brief moment, I thought we would make it. But the terrain itself had become our enemy, and Gremlin got stuck. Knowing we couldn't turn back, I leapt from her saddle, unholstered my gun and started firing. But I already knew. It was good night, Gremlin. Gremlin! Having pulverized my feline friend, the cave beasts turned their murderous rage on me. I wanted to stay and fight. I wanted to go to Gremlin. But I stood no chance, and like a coward, I ran. There would be time for mourning later, but now I needed to bring in reinforcements. The reinforcements did not have Gremlin's resistance or combat ability, but, at least for the time being, they managed to hold their own. After we'd cleared out the first antechamber, the reserve Sabertooths were extremely low on health, and we made the executive decision to press forward with just the baryonyx. We proceeded cautiously. I'd use my crossbow to bait one or two creatures into engaging, and the Baryonyx Brigade would finish them off. As a strategy, it was incredibly effective. Right up until it wasn't. That is a lot of stuff. That is a lot of stuff. We reached a choke point clogged with creatures. Our bait and beat strategy worked on the direwolves, the palovias, and the bears, and we took all of them out. But the yetis were a different matter entirely. To spare my exhausted barriers, I grappled to the ceiling and tried taking at least a couple down with my ranged weapons, but I would run out of ammo before they ran out of life. In the end, the only option was to fight them head on. Except, as it turns out, we hadn't disposed of quite all the palovias. I raced to get back to my brave barriers, but it was already too late. And do you want to know the worst part? The worst part is that the artifact was literally just around the corner. We had gotten so close, only to fall at the last hurdle. Oh, my poor berries. I don't know if their bags despawned or I just missed them. So close. The ride back to base was a quiet one, as we took the time to process the storm of emotions we were feeling. Most prominently, there was grief for the lives lost to the ice cave. There was annoyance too that our friends had fallen so close to the goal. But then there was anticipation. Obtaining the artifact of the strong meant our collection was complete. We now had everything we needed to enter the boss arena. With all the artifacts safely stashed away and our army progressing, more on that soon, there was only a smidge of prep work remaining. The most immediate problem was finding a Yudi. We were in the early hours of day 81 and still hadn't found anything worth taming. Our search did net us a high-level male Daedon though, which was a good get if not, strictly necessary. After a few frustrating and fruitless days, and with the date of our boss fight rapidly approaching, we were finally forced to compromise. Prepare to be disappointed again. Where's the actual Yudi? Maybe. 60? I mean, what is the best we've seen so far? Let's see if I can claim that. Let me get rid of you. Oh. I'm not sure if I want to claim you. You don't seem all that smart. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's better than taming a level 15. Come here. Come here. I wouldn't stop looking for a Uteranus entirely, but my priorities lay elsewhere now. Specifically with outfitting my army in their fanciest battle attire, which, joy of joys, meant more resource farming. With the help of my tribe mates, I was able to gather resources at a pretty steady rate and had most of the saddles I needed within no time. But then I ran out of hide. Collecting hide had been a pain in, well, my hide, the entire playthrough. Do you remember the early days when we were nothing more than beach bums living out of a shitty houseboat, struggling to scrape together enough hide to make one Argy saddle? Well, the spawning situation hadn't improved all that much since then. I was consistently dino wiping or logging in and out, trying to farm hide when the creatures kept disappearing was bloody difficult. But you also may remember some time ago that I claimed a pair of orphaned sheep babies. I did that specifically to counteract the hide problem that had evolved out of the lack of spawns problem. Except I bloody forgot about those little buggers, didn't I? And that mistake would be deadly. Frostbite and I invited calamari, the only baryonyx to survive the caves, out on a hide-gathering expedition. The journey started off on a great note. Spawns were, actually spawning. The hide was accumulating. But as the day drew to an end, we made the slightly unwise decision to battle an entire herd of mammoths. Though we emerged victorious from this fight, both calamari and Frostbite had taken a pretty severe beating. Deciding we had collected a sufficient amount of hide for now, I scooped up calamari, mounted Frostbite, and asked him to fly home where we could all rest and recuperate. On our way home, we kept our eye out for high-level creatures. I still hadn't given up on taming a Yudi, but that's not what we found first. While Frostbite and I were engaged in a bit of last-minute hide farming, we stumbled upon a level 145 direwolf. Direwolves had been yet another creature I'd been searching for since putting down roots in the Arctic, and like many of the others, I had zero success finding decent levels. So coming across a random high-level wolf in the wilds got me pumped, and I excitedly went about setting up my trap. So focused was I on setting up my trap that I didn't notice a second and then a third wolf pack assimilating into the first. But that wasn't the worst of it. The bellows of a nearby Yudi echoed through the trees. Feeling the pressure and surrounded by chaos, a combination of my impatience and inattentiveness led me to making a stupid rookie mistake. I forgot to monitor my stamina. The very moment Frostbite curled his talons under the belly of the 145 wolf was the same moment his stamina hit zero. Frostbite, no! Frostbite! I had cost my best friend his life. Thanks to calamari, I survived my own brush with death, but honestly, there was a part of me that wished I hadn't. Too numb inside to take charge, it was calamari who stepped up and meted out our gory retribution, unleashing her grief and fury on every wolf in the vicinity. But revenge wasn't going to bring Frostbite back. The battle for vengeance had taken us far afield, but neither calamari nor I were willing to leave Frostbite behind, so we looked for him as darkness descended, our search stretching deep into the night. We discovered multiple casualties of the battle, but no Frostbite. Fed up, I said bugger it and installed a bag finder mod, and even then, Frostbite took another hour to find. But we did eventually find him. Frostbite! I found you. No, the first thing I want, where's your little soul? Give me that. This was not my first rodeo. Paleo media has been traumatizing me for decades. Mother? Ew! But this loss genuinely hurt. Bathed in the ominous light of a red dawn, our hearts burdened by grief, calamari and I solemnly trudged home. Our only consolation was that we'd managed to haul back the hide we'd initially sought, but what paltry compensation that was. With significantly less enthusiasm than I'd had before, I went about finishing my preparations for the boss battles. At some point, the old incandescent light bulb went off and I finally remembered I had bloody sheep in storage, and I got those breeding. Hide wouldn't be an issue any longer, but my mood deteriorated further as I realised Frostbite had died in vain, only for it to be slightly bolstered moments later by an unexpected offering.
Nice.
While I was very grateful for this bounty from the seas, I also knew from experience that if I knocked it out in the water, it would very likely drown. But this was the best level I'd ever found, and what's more, it was stuck firm in the ice. Or at least I hoped it was stuck firm. I like our chances, Wedgie. Hold up. The oxygen isn't going down? Really? I mean, that doesn't make sense, but I'll take it. You have no idea how long I've been searching for you. In a sign that the arc pendulum just might be swinging back in my favour, the Yudi didn't drown, and after taming her, I realised she was female, the opposite sex to the level 60 baby I'd claimed earlier. The timing wasn't perfect, and I'd be cutting it really close because I was scheduled to fight the bosses in only a few days, but I brought up the Yudis anyway. If that pendulum kept on shifting in my favour, I might just be able to raise an imprinted baby Yudi by the time I had saddled, levelled, and healed my entire boss army. That night was spent harvesting the remaining resources. The sheep strat worked brilliantly. Too bad I didn't think of it earlier. And come morning, we had crafted the last of the saddles. All this time, my army had been stranded on an iceberg, isolated from the rest of the tribe while they trained for the ultimate fight. Those Iguanodon pups I'd claimed so many weeks ago were now having pups of their own, though fate wasn't as kind to them as it had been to their parents. But their noble sacrifice served a greater cause: experience. All of my soldiers had gained roughly 60 levels from the perpetual puppy party, and now it was time to cash in. After settling up and leveling up, all we had to do was wait for everyone to be healed up, and the battle could begin. During the early morning hours of day 88, the air crackled with anticipation. Widgie and I inspected the troops and were pleased to note that while the army had healed, our Uterranus baby had reached full maturity. The time had finally come. We ascended Blue Obelisk Mountain and, once at the summit, ordered the soldiers into formation. So much work had gone into making this moment possible. Almost 90 days of toiling and grinding and crafting and looting. It had cost many lives and, on occasion, even came close to claiming my sanity. But we endured. We were here. And there was only one thing left to do. Ready to go. Should I don't know, give an inspiring speech or something? Piggies. Beauty. Danger Piggy. My brothers and sisters. I look into your eyes, and I see the same fear that would take the heart of me. Which is appropriate, because we're about to get our asses kicked. Oh, we're gonna get our asses kicked. Ow. There might be a chance you may have some questions. What the actual fuck was that, to name one example? Let's just say mistakes were made, mostly by me, or if I'm being honest, all of them by me, and shit hit the fan real quick. So let's snap on the latex gloves, unsheath the scalpels, and give that boss fight a bit of an autopsy. Rewind the tape. Mistake 1. I whistled, "Attack my target." I have no reasonable explanation or excuse for this. Mistake 2. I went to lure the Megapithecus on foot. Mistake 3. I shot the bastard in order to lure him, causing all of my tames, who, I remind you, were on attack my target, to charge after him. Mistake 4. When half my Phiomia got stuck on the stairs, I ran around on foot trying to get them unstuck. Mistake 5. Got hit by Big Rock. Mistake 6. Did not drink med brews after being hit by Big Rock. Mistake 7. Kept trying to unstuck the piggies. Mistake 8. Got hit by second Big Rock. And mistake 9, died. Got eaten by Onoda. So all in all, not bad for my first boss fight in like 6 years. And we're back. So yeah, it's been a couple of days. I'm not quite as upsetty spaghetti as I was. Oh, there's another Yudi down there. But I don't have any of my equipment because I lost it all. But here's the thing, right? Yes, I buggered up and I lost all the crap that I have, but A, that's why I don't take my best gear into caves or boss arenas, just in case that happens. But, you're only level 10. Ugh. You're a level 10 too. What are you? 45. I mean, that's an improvement, but still not great. But here's the thing, right? I am now feeling a lot more optimistic about our chances of actually beating the boss, or a boss, with Phiomia. Because despite my screw-ups, my multiple screw-ups, we didn't do too bloody badly. Like, I was surprised by how much damage we actually did to that thing, and not all of my piggies, you know, were in on it. I think we could actually, if not do it, get pretty bloody close. I knew going into this that failure is always a risk. As the quote goes, no plan survives contact with the enemy, and if plan A didn't work, it was time for plan B.
We have a plan B?
No, but it's time for one.
Plan B was simple but effective, just the way I like 'em. It was basically just plan A, but sans the humiliating death and Otter defiling my corpse at the end. So I put my nose to the grindstone straight away. After retrieving Wedgie from atop the mountain, breeding Phiomia was next on the agenda. I am so glad I originally bred more creatures than I knew I would be taking into the boss arena, because this saved me so much time. As my Phiomia multiplied, I focused on resource farming. Another fact that I'd been using to try and console myself was that the Phiomia saddles were fairly cheap, only costing basic materials that were easy enough to harvest, so it didn't really matter that I'd lost 18 of them. Telling myself that though didn't make grinding for the next 18 any less tedious. After a busy day butchering sheep, I gave the training yards a bit of a reno. The previous puppy delivery platform had one minor flaw. The creatures leveling up would often get stuck beneath it, and the improved system would hopefully fare better and yield more efficient results. We just had to wait for the young Phiomia to grow up before they could test it out. And we wouldn't even really have to wait that long, because by evening, all 18 Phiomia babies had arrived. Activating tough love parent mode, we sent those babies out into the cold and dark. If they couldn't survive the elements, they wouldn't survive against an Ark boss. The harvesting fest carried on through the night as their maturation bar filled, and in the morning, Wedgie and I were greeted by 18 fully formed Phiomia. So we turned on the puppy faucet, making it literally rain dogs, popped the piggies on aggressive, and let them rip. Also, literally, if you're a dog lover, you might want to look away. I was tempted to lurk around base for a few days, giving my Phiomia a chance to gain as many levels as possible, but I still needed to retrieve the artifacts, so citing cabin fever as my excuse, I went and did just that. First, the artifact of the Devourer, then the artifact of the pack, which was not as much of a pain in the ass to find this time because I'd learnt of a shortcut, and then finally, the artifact of the Brute. Once back home, I lurked, yes, but I'm a very talented multitasker, so simultaneous to my lurking, I crafted, harvested, and looted. In actuality, I was just doing any sort of busy work I could think of to keep myself occupied until all of my Phiomia were ready. And on day 93, they finally were. Let's get things started here. I think it might be advantageous to have you on, although ignore group whistles, but then on passive. Or you're already on passive. You... no, I might leave you on neutral. You, actually, I want you on passive because I'm going to be riding you. Excuse me, please. Excuse me, please. Let me in. Is this you trying to tell me you don't want to do the boss fight? Well, stiff shit, we are. And Wedgie's clear, right? Wedgie's clear? Yep. Oh, you know what I didn't bring? I didn't bring medical brews. Bugger it. Let's do this. Alright, Pipduck, you're the swiftest, so you will be used to lure out the big guy. Oh, no, we don't need to poop now. Everyone, go. Get the monkey. Piggy's gonna die, and then so am I. Can I grapple up there? Can I grapple anywhere? Nope. I think this is going to work. Let me grapple somewhere. That worked. Oh my god, that worked. Okay. Can you read? Oh, maybe not. This still counts. It still counts. But come here where I can see you. Should have brought those medical brews. I'm told it's not the most pressing issue right now. That counts. That totally counts. Oh, God. Now I have to get myself down without killing myself. Nice and easy. Nice and easy. Oh, did my Daedon survive? And gentle, gentle, gentle. Oh my God. My hands are shaking. Piggy! Did she survive? She did! Oh, I'm gonna move all this away. I am starving. I need to go get this loot. Come on, Piggy. 10, 9. Oh, I'm not gonna make it, am I? Oh. I don't care. I don't care. We beat the boss with pigs. Oh, Data, where are you? Good job, you little champion. Alright. Where's Wedgie? Wedgie! Wedgie! You will not believe what just happened. Whether I believed it or not, it did actually happen. Even if the execution was slightly wonky, the ultimate goal was achieved. We had defeated the Megapithecus. But our next battle might prove to be even more challenging, for we would square off against the arachnid adversary, the Brood Mother. My target. Focus on the boss. Focus on the boss. Come on, come on. Few more hits, guys. Few more hits. Nicely done. Okay, I'm not going to miss out on the loot this time. Follow me, everybody. Good work, boys and girls. Hey. I didn't lose that many at all. And hang on, who have we got over here? The Dimetrodon. What are you doing behind the tree? Oh, there's one over here too. Come back. Billy, what are you doing? You're all very hurt, but that doesn't matter because we emerged victorious. Which, in a turn of events that I was absolutely not expecting, we defeated rather handily. I had spent pretty much this entire playthrough giving the Iguanodons shit, and those low-level buggers had somehow taken out the Broodmother with ease. So I would like to take this opportunity to formally and sincerely apologize to all Iguanodons out there. I underestimated you. My bad. I will do better in the future. But that future included one last boss fight. And to be upfront, it was the one that I'd been dreading the most. The dragon was not a foe that would be taken down quite so easily. But I had a feeling that my Carbonemus might just be up for the challenge. Okay, let's go. Let's do this. That's complete bullshit. I did not believe for a second that we were going to beat the dragon with Carbonemus. And surprise, surprise, we got our asses kicked. We absolutely got our asses kicked. Pokemon lied to me. Water does not beat fire. And defeated, but not entirely surprised by that defeat, we headed back to base one last time. As the first quarter of my year on the island drew to a close, I dabbled in a bit of light interior decorating as a way to honour the brave heroes who had sacrificed their lives against the bosses. And while my hands were busy, my mind wandered, reflecting on all that had happened on my journey so far. The army I had recruited and led, the 1.5 bosses we'd defeated, the 6 individual building projects I'd begun, the 6 building projects I'd never finished. What else did I do? I mean, it's been 90-something days. Surely I've accomplished more than that. Well, I did get my best friend murdered, but that was hardly very time-consuming. Oh, the caves. We went spelunking and retrieved all the artifacts. So, yeah, in conclusion, I'd say that was 90-something days well spent. And as the afternoon sunlight filtered through the open windows, my thoughts strayed from the past and turned instead towards the future. What triumphs and tribulations would my remaining days bring? Would I finally complete a single bloody construction project? And the most important question of all, who amongst my tribe mates would dare to have the courage to step forward, lay down the Flak Gauntlet, and challenge the beta bosses?